Arsenal versus Real Madrid, we have just watched Arsenal more or less tactically obliterate Real Madrid, and Arteta has really done one over on Carlo Ancelotti here because a lot of people came into this game thinking that Real Madrid, the quality would just outshine anything that Arsenal did, even if they got it tactically spot on. A lot of people thought that the quality would overshine from Real Madrid, but today from Arsenal, they exposed all of Madrid's weaknesses, more or less. They got the goals that are necessarily going to mean that they go to the Bernabeu and they can just set up in a defensive manner. Because if they go in at 1-0, brilliant result for Arsenal still, but getting those extra few goals just makes that trip to the Bernabeu that little bit easier for them, and it's going to make it harder for the crowd to get up for it at Madrid. It's gonna be harder to get things going, swinging in their favour. I mean, it makes it a bigger momentum shift needed for anything to happen. I mean, it's not unthinkable, but at this point, especially with the way Arsenal defend, I'd be very, very shocked. Today's video, we're going to speak about quite a few people to speak about, in my opinion. I think Lewis-Skelly was excellent. I think Rice, obviously. Who else was we going to do? Merino, I think, was a really important role. He's going to be a big figure in this video because I don't know if many people noticed how important he actually was in today's game. And then, of course, talk about this matchup because Bukayo Saka was absolutely brilliant. Considering that's his first start, I mean, he's come back, played 2 games off the bench. And let's start with Saka because, honestly, every time he got into this 1v1 scenario against Alaba, especially in that first half, he has an ability that not many possess to pretty much wherever he receives the ball to swivel and be able to stand up his man. Now, it's very tough for teams to get close enough to Saka where they can keep him facing backwards because at any point, and even when he's so good at quickly sort of being able to do a little dummy, a little shift, or have Erdegaard to sort of link with really quickly, even if it's just to dump off the ball, retract, get the ball back, and then he's all of a sudden he's facing forwards. He's really good at his body orientation to get himself face up with a fullback because once he's in this area, he's a nightmare. He's an absolute nightmare. He can beat you on the outside. He can sidestep you and go inside and actually drive towards goal. He can sort of work his way inside and connect. So he could even like little pass in here, little ball over the top to the back post. His weaponry, his arsenal, in fact, is genuinely outstanding. And he was unbelievable today. So like, so good. If you thought anyone was going to get a goal, you probably would have said Saka in that first half. But then in the second half, a lot of different things happen, which of course we're going to speak about with these two. But I think these 3 here, all really important in the build-up, and we're going to say why. So let's sort of move into a big part of this video. And what I'm going to start with is how Arsenal looked to set up. So you had Lewis-Skelly drifting inside into this area of the pitch where he was really, really effective, as always. Hugely massive fan of Lewis-Skelly. I think he's so good. Again, forming that sort of back 3 here. Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. so redundant in the press, really slow, really sort of poor at cutting out anything, poor work rate, poor ability to sort of screen and keep an eye on their cover shadows with Partey and Lewis-Skelly. It was just easy for them to get on the ball and affect the game. So really poor from them too. But they were there in the middle of the sort of in the 4-4-2. And then you had Bellingham and Rodrigo, who we're going to speak about in a minute, because what we basically saw is Merino drop into here, Rice in here, Erdegaard in here. So what you essentially had here was this line of 5 across the front, but with these 3 all working in tandem, and sometimes Merino even sitting slightly deeper in this sort of 3, okay? Now what this did is, what Arsenal were trying to do is, again, they had so much free will to sort of pass this ball around the back and attract these players to push forward whenever it is on the ball side. So let's say it's on the ball side with Kivior. Rodrigo steps up. Bellingham's probably going to be a little bit deeper, but not too much deeper. Because, again, they just looked a little bit lost in that sense today. And Bellingham was he was helping to double up on Saka at times, but they were both a little bit lost in between the 2. But if you could attract one of them out, then the spaces that could be exploited, especially due to this section of the pitch, was so key. Real Madrid were almost refusing to jump out from, like, these 2 did not want to leave that back line. So again, in the Premier League, what you see a lot with teams that sort of try to play this way is the way to get that to make that a 3v3 rather than a 3v2 in here would be you'd have one of these on him, one of him on him. So that would mean Asensio jumps up. And yes, it leaves a big space here, obviously a big gap. But again, like in the Premier League, it's become quite apparent that for teams to play in that way and have man for man across the back and not really need that +1 in the back line. But, and again, we saw it with these two. They were pinned out wide with Martinelli on Valverde and their terrible circles and Saka on Alaba. But with the two Madrid centre backs just refusing to jump out, you almost created this really sort of this 3v2 here. But Marino's positioning in the middle was so effective because, like I say, when this ball is over here, Rodrigo's pulled out, the space is here. So what would happen is either Rice would pull into here, Lewis-Skelly would sort of make a run into here. So you can either progress through the middle or you can find a way to progress into Rice, which is again what they did with these little third man combinations. Once Rice has got that ball in there, Modric, because Odegaard was here and Camavinga, he was that was his man at that point. Bellingham hadn't fully dropped off to sort of mark either of these two players. He's sort of in between all three, having to juggle those roles. Which now means with Merino here, he's got Modric somewhat attached to him. Again, Modric he's the guy to then put the pressure on, like the next guy up, because again, Valverde's pinned here. This would be Modric's job to go and apply pressure. But because Merino is so well positioned in here and the defenders didn't want to jump out, it was almost just pinning Modric at times. And it was causing these moments of indecision where Modric was a little bit slow to get out to Rice, or he was a little bit slow to decide whether he wanted to leave Merino. Or again, if it was this way and Rice was sort of pulling into here on the ball and Modric was sort of between the two, then all it did differently is because these two weren't going to work back anyway. And again, because they're pinned by these three, it's harder for Modric or Camavinga to make the jump up. The likes of Lewis-Skelly and Partey had the lay of the land when that ball sort of came back into the middle of the park through those little like up back through sort of combinations. Like the spaces between these two lines became so big that they were just able to carry it into these spaces. You had these two sort of pulling out into these areas so they could attack those half spaces from wide. They could drive into it. And then you had the runs from these two in behind, and it was stretching the back line further, which meant the deeper these two got, the more these two wanted to drop off again, which would drop these two off. And it was just a knock on effect through the team that allowed Arsenal to just take complete control of the game, really. Real Madrid, of course, they had some really good chances, especially in the first half for Mbappe. But Real Madrid have the quality, you know they're going to get chances. And I think Arsenal did so well to limit the chances and the types of chances that they were giving away. There was a few early errors that allowed Real Madrid to quickly exploit at fast pace. But yeah, I really do think it was a really good performance from Arsenal. One of the best that I've seen this year in the Champions League for sure. And yeah, I just think there was so much to it. Rice with two absolute belters. I mean, the second one was unbelievable, but the first one in itself, a great goal, puts you 1-0 up, such a meaningful goal. And then again, Merino, I tweeted at the end of the game because a lot of what I just spoke about there, I was sort of thinking, this is going to go under the radar. So I went to put a tweet out, and as I was tweeting that people aren't going to see how important Merino's been today, that's when he scored. So all of a sudden, he is going to get that praise. But like I said, I think even without the goal today, even without any of the touches, I think the role that he played, positioning himself almost between that box of four and allowing space for the likes of Rice, Myles Lewis-Skelly, Partey and Odegaard too, but I think there was a lot more sort of emphasis on this left-hand side with these two. And then Saka being like the primary outlet on that right-hand side, sort of seeing like they wanted to draw players in on this left-hand side, get it out to Saka in a 1v1 so that he could affect the game in that manner. But it was really good on that from Rice, Lewis-Skelly. Rice has got to get man of the match for that performance, but there were so many good performances that sort of led towards it. Like I say, Merino was key. Lewis-Skelly, Martinelli was good as well. I thought could have had a goal in the first half. Was doing well to sort of stretch in behind a bit. I didn't think Valverde had the worst game at right back either. But yeah, he's just again a complete player. So what did you guys make of that game? I'd like to know what tactical things that you noticed or what players really stood out for you. What do you think will happen in the second leg? Of course, it's very likely now that Arsenal go through. What I would love to see is Arsenal versus PSG because I was having this conversation earlier. I do think it would very much be a lot of the physicality from Arsenal. I think it would be one of those games where they're trying to take it to Real Madrid here. I think PSG, much like they did with Liverpool, would just completely control the game. And I think it would be one of those games where, and Arsenal are well set up for this, to sit very deep, play a physical game, get set pieces, work their way from that, hit teams on the break. Again, you've got Martinelli and Saka back for that. So I think that would be a very good matchup, and that's what's looking likely if PSG beat Aston Villa. And of course, Arsenal don't bottle this 3-0 lead. So let's see what happens there. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like to support the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.